Hello.
Hello. Hi, can you hear me? This is Diane.
Yeah. Hi, Diane. It's George.
Hi, George.
How you feeling?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
We are loving life. Look at that smile. What's up?
It's good to see you.
You made it all the way to Fresno. Thank you.
So,
I'm gonna
can
take
you?
I'm gonna take a
So,
minute to
can,
introduce you real quick, and then we're gonna go ahead and get started.
okay,
All right,
sounds
guys.
great.
This is Diane Musselman, a really, really good friend of mine, very intelligent woman, compassionate, caring, loves film and loves people. She is a true collaborator. I used to drive from Hollywood, go out to meet her in a little cafe off the 101 over there, and we would be building a project. And one day Diane calls me and goes, "Hey, do you know this guy Rob Greenlee?" And I'm like, "No." And she goes, "Do you know the show Grey's Anatomy?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, he's about to be the director of our film." Like, what? She hooked it up. I don't know how. Like, she became writer, collaborator to like big time producer. She goes and contacts this guy, has a connection, and all of a sudden Rob Greenlee, the Grey's Anatomy dude, is directing our film. So you don't have to have all these crazy connections. You don't have to know all these crazy people to make things happen. The reason I'm sharing this with you is she makes things happen, like on every level. And not just because she has the connection and knows how to do it, because she's just relentless. She'll keep calling people, sending emails, figuring out a way, finding a solution to make it happen. Okay? That's the segue into, that's how she's gotten her films, the type of success she's gotten her films. And, you know, her films have made it to film festivals. They've won awards, numerous awards. So we can start talking a little bit about that. Now, without further ado, Miss Diane Musselman. Thank you.
Greetings, everybody. I kind of wanted to start here and just talk to you a little bit about how do you find the right story? I'm also a writer as well as a producer, and I just directed my first short, and we just finished we've got picture lock, so I'm excited about that. So let's talk about getting the story that you want to do. And the old adage, write and produce what you know. How I know George is that we did a film called Just Another Dance with My Father. And the director he's referring to is Rob Greenlee, who is now quite a successful television director since then. He had just directed his first episode. And how I found him was I was talking about this story about a young stroke survivor and how it works, and how, as someone who has worked as a speech pathologist, I always felt that Hollywood never quite showed what they go through. And so I was talking to a friend of mine in an acting class, and her name is Leslie Morris, and I'll talk a little bit about her later. Turns out Leslie works on the set of Grey's Anatomy, and she goes, "I know this director who wants some more credits. He's building his brand. He's wants to have an opportunity to really shoot something." So turns out it was Rob Greenlee. And so just starting with something that I was passionate about, something that made sense to me, that I felt strongly about, that opened up doors. So as you're practicing and as you're creating your content, I would, if you're fairly new, I would kind of take a look at writing something that means something to you. And so some of the things that George asked me to talk about today was about raising money, creating your team, also film festivals. So some of this may be stuff you've heard from some of the other wonderful guests that you've been exposed to this weekend. But I'm hoping you'll gather a few nuggets of wisdom from my experience. So raising money, probably the most difficult part of making a film. My suggestion, if you're starting out, grab an iPhone, grab some friends, find a small piece of filming that you want to do. For example, when I started out, before I made Just Another Dance with My Father, I had gotten with a group of friends and we were wanting footage. The irony is that I started out being an actor and I just wanted to have footage that I could use. And what happened was we decided to make some films. Just be prepared to make a lot of mistakes when you start out. In fact, I see you all there. I'm curious, how many of you have already made films? If you want to raise your hands. Okay. So some of this you've already experienced and you've gone through. But for those who haven't, I would say that starting out with a group of friends, that's when you'll find out things that work and don't work. For example, the very first film that we made was unusable because the sound was bad. That's where we learned anyway, that the value of someone who really knows what they're doing when it comes to sound. And then from there, the next one that we made had a little bit more professional people attached. It was a huge difference between the two films. So by the time George and I got to Just Another Dance with My Father, I was pretty much leaving the acting world behind, and I was working with people who were already in the business. And a lot of times it's just putting it out there, talking about it with friends, going to events, shaking hands. It is important to go out into the world, go to festivals and see what films are playing, go to events or belong to organizations and go and listen and talk and be around that, so that when you're starting out, your first few films, you start out with the people that you know, and then you have to build your team. So I guess the big lesson that I learned is you have to find your tribe. You have to find people that you trust, that you can work with, that know what they're doing. You have to sit there and be selective with the people you allow in. And this is not just people that you're working with. This is people that are around you as friends. You don't want yes people. You want people that are going to support you, that will sit there and be honest with you, but also when you've made something, have your back. And that's probably the biggest lesson that I've learned from all of this. It's been a learning lesson. And then I would also add to that as you go, you may need to weed out some of the weeds in your tribe. I'm going through that a little bit right now, as a matter of fact. And be willing to grow. But having that team that you can trust is important. Does that make sense, guys? So, let me see. Raising money. The first thing that you can save money on is the script. You have to make that script as tight as you can before you even start to think about it. First of all, write the story that you want, and then go through with it with a fine-tooth comb. What is absolutely necessary to really tell a great story? When I just did Harmony, which is the one I directed and wrote, I actually sat down with the producer and we had to sit there and be harsh on the script. But we ended up with a much better script and a tight script, because every page that you put down, that's money. So you got to start with that. So run it through fellow writers, friends, take notes, be willing to take a look at the script. And as a writer, I will also say sometimes you don't make changes in certain places because you realize how important it is to the rest of the story. So I would sit there and I would fight for the things that I thought were really important. But I also heard what she was saying. So that was important. Then that's where you can save the most amount of your money.
Diane, how do you know which battle to fight? If you're choosing your battles and you're like, no, that's important. Is it just important to you, or was it important because it serves the story? How do you choose that battle?
Great question, George. I would say you choose, I would say it was to choose what is important to the story. In the case of Harmony, she wanted to get rid of a couple of lines, and I came back and I said, but these lines refer to this over here. And so when she would look at it, we would go through the script again and again. By the time it was done, she'd go, you're right. But, you know, it's important to hear what bumps other people. For example, when I wrote Harmony, there was this one section, and I had 4 people look at it, and all 4 said, we don't understand that section. And so I had to go back in and redo it. Now, one of the big things that my writing coach told me that was really helpful is that she said, look for the fire, look for the smoke, but don't change things to what other people think you should change them to, because you know the story. Did that answer your question, George?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me get a question from the field. Mike, how about you? You have a question right now?
I just want to know how much of my talk she's shortening for me. She's doing a great job.
Oh.
I have a hard time cramming like a 3-hour thing into 1 hour. She's already touched on a good 10 minutes of it, so keep going. You're making my job easier.
He's going to be talking about the writing later, but I knew you guys would get along. I knew there would be some synergy here for sure.
I've got my thing open, my section on Find Your Tribe.
Very cool, very cool. Let me get a question from our youngest guy in here, the most inexperienced, but a very hungry, motivated young filmmaker. Juan Carlos, talk to us.
I have a question. So my question is, so when you have this story, how do you what's the best way to present it to someone? And like when you pitch it, how do you go with that?
Well, you know what? It sounds like you have a writer there that I think I want to defer a little bit to him on that, because I want to give some respect there. Is that okay? It's a great question.
Great question.
Well, I'm sorry, we were passing it. What was the question?
How do you go with pitching something? How would you sell that story? The story that you have.
You know what? At 3, you're still here at 3 o'clock.
Yes.
We're gonna get into it. I've got a pretty structured thing, but the short version is Stephanie Palmer has written what I think most people consider the authoritative pitch book. It's good for entrepreneurs across the board, but it's tailored for screenwriters. She's an MGM exec who went through thousands of hours of meetings, and she's written the 5 phases that every pitch meeting goes in order, how to succeed in each step. The book I highly recommend. The gist of it is available as free downloads on her website, goodintheroom.com. She's a consultant. She's fantastic. So Stephanie Palmer, the book is Good in a Room, website's goodintheroom.com. And so in the interest of time and redundancy, that's your go-to. And then there are other things that we'll get into later on.
I have a question about when you were just talking about, you know, when you write and you have to sit down and go over what to get rid of, what not to get rid of and everything. Are you kind of talking about like, okay, you already know what your budget is and you're kind of like trying to stay within that budget, so you're getting rid of stuff because of the budget, or are you talking about getting rid of stuff because of time itself?
Great question, and I would say both are correct, depending on the film. One thing that we were wanting to shoot for another thing that I did called Afterthoughts, we had to cut 3 pages of dialogue. And we had to figure out how to make it work because we knew the time was exactly from sundown to sunup. You can only do so much within that time. So we had to get very creative and very to the point of what it was we were going to shoot. And so I'm going to kind of talk about a few other things, and then I'm going to come back to that. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. All right, so when we're raising money, let's say you're starting with a short film. We've all heard about the Kickstarter stories. And you can only ask your family and friends so many times. That's the real truth. Back when it first started, people were raising huge amounts of money, but we just tried to raise money for Harmony, which is about domestic violence. And we found that even people I thought for sure would donate, they just didn't. And we really pushed hard, and we raised quite a bit of money, but I'm afraid some of that money came out of my own pocket. But what we did do, which I think helped us a lot, is look for 501 nonprofit companies. We use From the Heart, which I think if you've got a film that is about something of substance, in our case it was domestic violence, and other people have done things that it's about making the world a better place, that's a good one to kind of look. I think there are other ones out there.
Diane, did you
But
use the 501c3, you use a nonprofit as a fiscal sponsor so
Yes.
other people could donate and have a tax write-off?
Exactly.
So that's a fundraising strategy, you guys.
So you're not talking about grants from the organization, you're just talking about a way for people to write off their donations.
Correct.
So for our film that went to the Cannes Film Festival, we used the San Francisco Film Society, and they were our fiscal sponsor. And every time somebody wanted to make a donation, they would have a tax write-off. But it was really helpful to have our fiscal sponsor as the San Francisco Film Society. So you can position yourself and leverage those nonprofits like she's talking about.
And I have to say that we did get some people who wanted to donate because of the tax write-off, because then they've got the biggest perk of all, in my opinion, is, that gives them something that they can really use versus a t-shirt or a coffee cup or something like that. And then people also like to get their names as co-producers and executive producers and things like that. But I tend to kind of shy a little bit away from that, just because if you're giving a substantial amount of money, for sure you deserve that executive producer title. But I guess I value the work that producers do. So there are also grants, but I'm going to tell you it's very tough to get those too, because we've been trying to get some grants for finishing funds. But that is something that I would invite you to kind of do some research on and trying to see the various grants that are out there. So, but asking friends and colleagues to do things for free, let's talk about that for just a minute. Because in the beginning, I was able to use friends, and some of for example, my DP could use some of his friends and kind of get people to generously give of their time at a lesser rate. You can only do that so much. At least that's been my experience. And also, as I've kind of gone along, I've wanted to get higher quality films. So we're definitely paying more, but then we're out of pocket a little bit more, but I think it's worth it. Because at some point we all, and I would assume you guys as well, we all want to rise to the level where we're getting paid and we're working in bigger productions and that sort of thing. So. And I also find that if I pay people, they're more willing to give me favors later on. So, does that make sense?
A quick question about the 501 method, because going back to that, does that box you into where you're not allowed to actually make profit off of your film if you use that type of a sponsor?
I don't know if they do that for full-length features. George, you may know that answer, but we tried them for our short film.
Profitability or the sales of the film.
Okay, and I wondered because I know that there were some SAG contracts and things that do put you in that kind of a box. And I wondered if this did something similar, and that was the basis of the question.
You know what, based on that?
No, it's a great question. We did it more for a short film, and our purpose was not to make money for this particular film that I used them for.
Mm-hmm. Like educational industrial videos, I was making one of those in the SAG contract for that it prevented us from making profit off of it. So
That's good to know.
that's been some years.
Because, we've been approached about making an educational film, so that just answered a question. So thank you for sharing
It's
that.
all on their website, though. You can double check.
Shay, do you have a question?
All right.
Yes, what are the resources and different ways for women producers? Is there grants or what avenue to go for there?
There are quite a few grants out there, and I think that there might be film, if I can find it. I'm looking for, I think it was film something. There was, I'll see if I can find it, but there was one film thing, and I'll make sure that I send it to George if I find it. But what it does is it sends out different grants, and I'd say for documentaries and more educational things, I see a lot more grants available than for films itself. I would also check out Women in Film. And there's various women organizations out there that sometimes have that available. But Women in Film is at least a good organization to get attached to and to find information and support.
Thank you.
Now, that doesn't mean that they'll necessarily give you the grants, but it's a good place to start. I want to say it was filmdaily.com or something like that. I'll see if I can find it and send it to George.
Okay, thank you.
But there are quite a few things that are coming available now for women. So, that's a great question. Any other questions on that? And before I start talking about film festivals?
Nope.
Okay. Film festivals. I will say that the most important thing you need to know is, what is your goal? And that's even for, if you are making films for other things. So everybody wants to put a film into Sundance, the big Tribeca, the big films. And I would say for the film industry, that's more the type of festivals that they look at. They're awfully tough to get in. I meant to look in to see how many people submitted this year, but there are, I want to say, don't hold me to it, but there was like 8,000 short films in the year that we submitted. I think maybe less than a fraction of 1% made it in. So let's take a look at film festivals in general. Are they worth it? I would say yes and no. First of all, there's thousands of them out there, and a good percentage of them are mom and pop types. And that's fine if you want to do it, if it's like in the area where your family can come and you just wanted a place to share your film with everybody. But there are some good smaller and medium level regional festivals that I think are worth your time, if nothing else, to go and meet people. The leading lady in Harmony that I hired, she and I met at the Pasadena Film Festival. Happened to sit down, and she and her husband sat down across the table from the person who was my director of photography. And we got to talking, and 6 months later, when we decided to do Harmony, she was the one we decided on. I reached out to her because I had seen her act. So it's a good place to meet other people. And I think ultimately we're making films to be seen. But I think the thing to be kind of aware of is that it can get awfully expensive if you're submitting, and then you have to think about travel and that sort of thing. So take a look as what is your goal? And definitely in your budget, you've got to include some money for it, because you don't want to get at the very end, you're out of money, you've done all of the creating of the film, you've done all of the, you paid off post-production, which almost always seems to cost a lot more than you're expecting. And then all of a sudden you've got no money. So start as early as you can, even when you're in pre-production, and take a look and think about, what do I want to do with this film? With Harmony, our goal is, it's about domestic violence, and so we do want to try and get it out to film festivals, but we also want to give this, when it's done, to organizations that help with domestic violence survivors. So that is our purpose. That is our goal. My personal goal with it is I would love to see if we can get it into like the medium level, which are more the regional ones that are Oscar qualifying. I would love that opportunity. I don't know if we're good enough, but I think we are. So we're going to, when we kind of set up our goals, we're going to go and consider smaller ones that we think the film fits. And then we're also going to consider the medium ones that we can stretch towards. And we may take a shot at one of the big ones. So for the goals, do you want to get it sold? If you're looking at more of a feature, again, I would say that the ones that you maybe want to aim towards are South by Southwest, that sort of thing. But I noticed when I was reading about somebody on the internet, I think her film is called Rust Creek. And she shared that she didn't get into any of the big ones. And she had films in some of the big named ones. And so she has actually had success in selling her film. And it was shown in some theaters, and then they put it online. And from what I'm picking up, people are actually watching it. So you don't need to necessarily have it go into a festival for it to maybe work. But so, getting your film seen and the costs associated with it, it's tough. From what I talked to a distributor not long ago, and she said things have kind of changed, and if you wait long enough, it's going to change again. This industry is constantly changing. But one of the things she said is 4 or 5 years ago, it was easier for independent films to be picked up and make some decent money, like in Netflix and Amazon and that sort of thing. But what has happened is Netflix and Amazon are now starting to move to using specific production companies. That's what I'm hearing from a few people. So we're kind of got our ear to the ground, because we've got a project we're trying to sell as a television series. So we're doing our due diligence and research in that. And maybe next time I'll have information on that. As you're looking at festivals, look at what kind of festivals they are. If you have a horror film, for example, it's probably not going to fit in every festival, but if you target it, that would probably be best. Also, ask your friends, ask other professionals what film festivals that they've been to that they like. They will probably be the best resource, because there's so many bad ones out there, and there's some that there are some out there that just want to make money, unfortunately. And I'm starting to see stories where people actually spent money. There was a young woman who had gone all the way to England and had spent money to go over there, and it really wasn't much of a festival. So be cautious with your money. I mean, if it's something that you like, hey, I just want people to see it, then you can throw it up on YouTube.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
You mentioned Oscar, and there's a lot of myths and stuff when it comes qualifying for the Oscars and stuff like that, for
Mhm.
shorts, for features, for animated, all that kind of stuff like that. When it comes to
Right.
short films, what are the qualifications? What are the actual, things that you have to do to get a project looked at by the Oscar panel or whatever it may be? Because there's just so many lies out there on how to get it there. So
Yeah.
how do you do that?
Well, I wish that I could say that I have had an Oscar qualifying film, but I've had friends who have tried submitting for it, and what they have shared with me is that there are Oscar qualifying film festivals out there. I want to say there's roughly 80 of them. But I also think, and again, this is not something that I have accomplished yet. But my friend Linda Palmer, she has submitted. Her films didn't make it in, but this year some of the music from her films made it to the top 75 of the films. They didn't make it into the final 5, and that would be awfully tough because you're competing against a lot of other musical films.
Would it be better to take your project and go and try to find these festivals, or is it better to take your project and try to four-wall it in order to get it seen on East Coast, West Coast, and things like that?
I don't know that I've got the answer to that question, but I've had friends who have done both.
Okay.
It's awfully expensive if you try and get into a lot of the festivals, because one of my friends did, and she submitted it to, I think at the time there was 80 festivals that qualified. They didn't make it into any of them. And that's a lot of money that you're spending.
Yeah.
And then versus I think she also four-walled it for a week. I don't know what she spent though. I know that when we tried to get a screening, some of those theaters can be $1,000 a pop. Now I don't know if it's spread out for a week. I would assume that's like it's 10,000 by the time everything is done. So
Yeah.
you gotta kind of weigh, and then of course you want people to come and see it, and make sure enough people come in to kind of make it worth your while. So.
But what do you really get from festivals? You get a laurel. All these festivals. I mean, I have friends that have been sticking with one film for the last 2 or 3 years, sending in the festivals. And on his Facebook page, he has the one film, and he's got like 20 laurels on it for qualified, for best whatever. But it's still not anywhere. So
Right.
And he's spending money on all these different festivals. So it's hard to determine
I guess that's,
if it's going to be worth
yeah.
putting it in festivals or not.
If you're starting out, I have a friend of mine who's helping me with Harmony this time because I've kind of helped her out with other projects. And one of her jobs is to manage films through film festivals. And she will share with you that you shouldn't be spending a ton of money. And because, for example, we're going to keep our budget for Harmony because, again, our goal is for people to see it because we want people to have a dialogue about domestic violence. So I don't want to spend a ton of money on festivals. There are some festivals where if you want to just get a bunch of nominations and things like that, if that's your goal, then there are certain festivals that kind of give, and this sounds bad, but a participation trophy. But will it mean anything to the industry? Not necessarily, but it will mean something to the general public who doesn't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I also wouldn't be spending a lot of money because you got to keep in mind you're going to travel to the festivals if you get in them. And so on the West Coast, there's a ton of festivals that are over here that are maybe worth your time if you're going to do it, and or pick places like I'm going to choose locations that family and friends are at, because then that allows me to travel and I've got a place to stay. And the reality is that for every festival that you submit, you're not going to get into every one. There's no way. And whenever I put films out for festivals, I only have a certain amount of time that I'm going to do it, because I want to move on. I want to make other things. I need to keep moving. I need to keep that momentum going, and just using the same film. And I've seen other people do it where they're still 3 years out, and that's all that they've got is this one film, versus I want to have like 2 or 3 films constantly coming out. And, I've been lucky to be involved with some films that were features, both as an actor and also, in the producer title. But even they've got X amount of time that they'll put their films out. Because it doesn't make sense to just keep doing it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I got a 2-part question.
Yeah.
One, is there a list somewhere online for credible festivals? And should you be wary of film festivals that email you with discount codes to be in their film festival?
Mhm. I tend to always be a little bit on the cautious side if I've never heard of a festival,
Yeah.
and they email me personally. I've definitely got. I don't know if I've seen a list per se. I'll ask some of my friends that like my friend Melissa, who's going to help us. But people talk. That's why I always ask my friends, or I'll go to the various groups that I belong to, and I say, what do you know about this festival? Is it worth my time? Is it a legit festival? Because there's so many not.
But that's one of the things, though, is it takes so much time to try to find these festivals. I mean, everybody knows about the big ones like Santa Monica, the Austin one, the LA Film Festival.
Right.
But what about, like you said, there's 80 of them. I knew about like 5 good ones, that of course are almost impossible to get into, but like 80
Right.
qualifying Oscar ones, like where are those ones at? You know what I mean? Like, that's where I would
Where do you find that list?
Yeah, where do you find that list at to know where they're all at?
Well, for the Oscar qualifying ones, I think there are lists if you plug it into the computer. I think that somebody has outlined some of the top tier ones. There are some in the LA area, and like some
Yeah.
Okay, I think George.
and Sonoma, and
Yeah, it's just a simple Google search.
what was that?
Yeah, George Ohan just sent us a link to all the 80, the list of them.
Thank you, George.
Welcome.
Anybody else got a question?
Yeah, with the stripper going out of business, did that affect your goals and strategies for your films? And did that, if so, did it affect how you select which festivals to go to?
Yeah, distributor. Does everybody know about what has happened with distributor?
Yeah, that was
I
a
know.
big one. Distributor is distributor. They handle independent films coming in. You pay, and they put your film out and stuff. Well, they went bankrupt, and there's a lot of different reasons why. But I don't. Do you know the actual reason why, or?
I don't think anybody really knows. It's like all of a sudden they closed their doors, and people who had significant amounts of money are, yeah, it's pretty bad.
One of the big people at Distributor, and it was an overnight layoff with no notice.
Yeah, I heard that
So-
that money that was supposed to go out didn't go out, and everything just stopped, and that just freaked out the entire industry. That they just went gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I know there was 2 of my projects I was planning to send to them, and about 2 weeks prior to me actually doing it, I saw the information about that they shut down, or no, they were gonna possibly shut down, and there were people online just telling everybody, don't send nothing, don't do anything, just stop. And then about 2 weeks later, they shut down. So
I'm glad you didn't have either of your projects in with them. There was a location, I think I don't even know if it's still online, but there was a Facebook group that was started about distributor, and so they were giving ideas on how to get back control of your projects, on Amazon and that sort of thing. So did anybody in the room get stuck with distributor?
no, I don't think so.
Oh, well, thank goodness.
Diane, can you speak on your personal experience with your last festival? You guys won a bunch of awards, but from after post-production, once it's done, okay, you guys start
Yeah.
submitting, and then you get the notification, hey, we're in, go from there.
Okay, so the last film, I had 2 films out on the festival circuit. One was called The Peck Situation, and the other was Afterthoughts. Afterthoughts was a paranormal crime thriller, and The Peck Situation was more of a very creative film where there was no dialogue. And it was so well done, the director who did it. And so the very last film festival we were at was called the Sholo Film Festival. It's a fairly new festival, but as far as small festivals, it's by the way, it's in the White Mountains of Arizona. Fairly new festival, but they really took care of us when we came there. There were lots of activities that they encouraged the different filmmakers to engage with each other, and they were one of the festivals, though, that do require that you be there the entire time. But you got at least a shot at an award. And I got lucky that the Peck Situation won a lot of the big awards. And I have to say, quality-wise, the films were actually quite good for being a small festival. Because I've been to some festivals and I'm like, ugh. So, now, what we did is there is a lag time from when you start to submit for festivals. When you start to submit, I highly recommend that you try and get in right in the beginning, because that's when it's the cheapest. That's when it's like $35 instead of $80. And to be honest, when you get to the level where it's the late submissions or the extra late submissions, honestly, they've already made most of their minds up, because that's where they're going to make money. They're just trying to bring those last few in. But for the most part, they've already started seeing a lot of the films, and they're starting to get tired of watching them. And this is from a friend that actually runs a festival. Because basically, the one thing I will tell you is the first 5 minutes, or the first 2 or 3 minutes of your film is the most important. You want to grab their attention. Because if they're looking at thousands of them, don't take the first beginning. If it's a short film, do not take the whole section of it to introduce everybody and that sort of stuff. Get into the film, make sure that you get their attention. The people who are watching hundreds of films, and so after a while they get tired, because that's a lot of film watching. But anyway, I'm trying to dial it back. George, you asked about what happened right after the festival started, right? Or I'm sorry, after you finished with post-production,
Once you got
right?
accepted to the festival, I want like travel arrangements, marketing, who you're calling, just the human aspect of it.
Okay. Once you get accepted into a festival, usually they send all the things that they want. Most festivals these days do want a DCP.
Your specific experience with this festival, not generally speaking, your experience at this festival, you had to get a hotel, you had to get, I want to know about you.
Okay. All right. So we'll use the Sholo Film Festival. So once we heard about it, what they do is they send it to you. They send all the information of, these are all the hotels that you can choose. So it gave me a chance to look up what was the least expensive hotel that I could go. I then made sure that we had the film made in whatever they preferred. In this case, it was a DCP. And they're usually very precise about what they want. There's still a few festivals that will still do maybe Blu-ray, but for the most part, a lot of the festivals are shifting to DCP. But I would have some Blu-rays and some DVDs available. Then I have a personal publicist that was doing some of our publicity and preparation. So more so when we did Just Another Dance with my father, I'm kind of switching between the two because I think it's important to hear both. We definitely would reach out to whatever newspaper or whatever they have as far as press in that area, just to kind of promote. Again, we used a publicist. I don't know that you need to do that all the time. Some festivals, in this case, the Sholo Festival, provided press. There were 2 days of newspaper and radio and magazine for the entire area. So we were actually interviewed while we were there. And that was great. Not every festival provides that, but when they do, take advantage of it. Also, this festival also told us there's going to be 3 different parties. So you could come ready to dress up and be involved with it. They had like a 50s party and a 90s party. And it was just fun to kind of sit there and dance and enjoy each other. And then as far as flying in, you had a choice of flying in. I made a choice to drive. I'm glad I did. It was a great drive. And it turns out that I ended up taking quite a few people around. But, then we, like I said, so we had the hotel. We had to make sure that whatever, be it a plane trip or you need the cost of a rental car. In some cases, if you're pretty close to where you're going to be for some cities, then you can, then sometimes they'll provide the transportation, but generally not. As far as we made sure that we had posters ready because they asked for 2 posters. That can get expensive, but there is a way to do it. Apparently, if you do it through Costco, because I had our art director take care of that for us. And then we also made sure we had lobby cards so that all of our information, in case somebody wanted to reach out to us, was on the back. There was the email, there was the different social media outlets, and then we made a choice to be constantly blasting social media and asking other people to keep putting it out there. And so anytime that we could provide a way, some exposure for the film festival, we were helping them, because you also want people to come and see your film. And because this one required that everybody be there, you could easily say the filmmakers will be there. And that was a requirement, because you had to be there for any kind of Q&A. You had to be there for any kind of press event. So they had red carpets. So it does require that you've got some decent clothes that you want to be pictured in. And anytime you can get a red carpet photo, even if you're not necessarily going through the line, do it. It's important to be seen that way. And I took full advantage of the press that was there. I made sure that I went and I had a conversation with every single one. So taking advantage of all of that, it just gets your name out there for future potential people wanting to watch you and to follow you online.
That was really awesome.
So
that you took full advantage of everything. Obviously, you show up and take advantage of everything going on there. You also submitted to a film festival that you wanted to be in. It wasn't just a shotgun blast.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Okay. Any questions out here? Diane Musselman, everybody.
Yeah, I've seen some producers bring their own red carpet to festivals. And
Damn, that's smart.
Not because the festival doesn't supply one, but either there's limited time frames for it, or the line is just so long. And because right by where their film's being exhibited, they bring out their own, their own lobby card and stands, and they just they make their own backdrops.
Dude, I love that. I never heard of that. That's awesome.
But my question is, do you think that's cheesy or just go for it?
No, that's awesome. Oh, go ahead.
I guess I take advantage of the red carpet. Now, I went to a recent friend who put up a film. It was a faith-based film, but they brought everything. They had people coming in from outside. Now, when they were doing the initial red carpet, they made sure that it was only for their cast and crew and that sort of stuff. They were making it, just about their people. The minute the film was done, they said, if anybody else wants to run out to the red carpet and take a picture, do it. And so I also took the opportunity to take pictures, selfies or whatever, of everything kind of going on so that I could show that I was taking advantage and being involved. And that's the most important thing, is you have to meet people. You have to reach out. You have to shake hands. You have to go celebrate other people's films. I'm thinking.
It's not myself, dude. That's a great idea. All right,
Yeah.
Diane, thank you so much. This
Yep.
has been really, really
You're welcome.
awesome today. We really appreciate you. I know you don't have to do this. You're over there in Los Angeles. We're a little group of filmmakers here in Fresno, but this is all about building relationships. And I want
Right.
everybody in this room to know you. You're one of my favorite people in life. And then also as a filmmaker, you're a kind person. So I want my friends to know my friends. And 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we can all know each other. But more importantly, professionally, I know she's doing stuff. And professionally, I know people in this room want to be doing stuff. So that's why I'm going to make that connection happen. Once again, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Round of applause, please. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Bye, George.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right, we're off. All right, 10 minutes.
right.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
This is Steven Sanchez. He is a very motivated and ingenious person. He went to UNLV. Go Rebels.
Yep, running Rebs.
Go Raiders.
Go 5-1. Hopefully today. Hopefully they.
I say the things to be nice to this guy.
to us. Not negative.
This book right here is a photography book, recently published by a real publisher out of New York. He's the author. We've been doing these classes called Teach, Coach, Mentor as a free workshop, as a way to bridge the gap between military veterans and civilians. I'm a U.S. Army veteran myself, and a lot of people have certain ideas about military veterans, especially right now. A lot of the talk is about post-traumatic stress and different things like that. And I just want to help to break some of these stigmas and to show like Army veterans or military veterans who are now back in their communities. A lot of them are leaders. A lot of them are leading from the front, community organizers, doing a lot of things that include leadership within the community. And that's what Teach, Coach, Mentor is all about. So Mr. Steven Sanchez, he attended a few of those classes. And you see he's holding the camera. He's a complete camera geek. But at the end of the day, he also showed up to the combat classes, stage combat training, acting classes, music business classes, entertainment business classes, whatever classes that we were offering, he would just show up. He was relentless. And out of the students, I'm not taking credit for this at all, I just want you to know, we were just there inspiring, doing what we do, but he took the initiative, he took the information and really ran with it and published his own book. So if you don't know anybody imagine having your own published coffee table book right there. It's awesome. Well, now you know a human who knows how to do that. He's your homie now because of this room. You could talk to him. You could figure out how to do your own. How many cool pictures do you have that you'd want to do that with? Or how many photographers do you meet that don't know how to publish their books? You know the real guy that knows how to do that. Okay, so without further ado, let's put our hands together, Mr. Steven Sanchez. Thank you.
All right, everybody, just do me a favor, just look this way real quick. All right. There we go. Wait on you, Leon. All right. 1, 2, 3.
Nailed it.
All right.
I was just concerned for the
Simple question. What did I just do right there?
Stole my soul.
Stores. Superstitious man right here. Love the shirt, by the way. Go Marvel. Plain and simple. I just took a picture. So for all of you that are wanting to do this, being a photographer, being a filmmaker, how do you start? It's as simple as that. Taking a photo. Nowadays, we have everything at our disposal. Everybody has a camera now. Your laptop has a camera. Your phone, your iPad has a camera. If more than likely a family member does have a camera, ask your mom, ask your dad, ask your grandparents. More than likely, somebody has something. Or those cheap little disposable ones that you could get at a Target or whatever, you know, those little disposable ones back in the day, get one of those. In this day and age, there's no excuse as to why you can't photograph something or film something. So as I evolved, as I got started, that's how it started right there. I had an interest in it. I said, what's there to stop me? Got a camera, I went out and did it. But the one thing I stress is that when you first start off doing this, educate yourself. And that's what I did with stuff like this. You know, here's a book called Read This If You Want to Take Great Photographs. You have so many great things as resources at your guys' disposal. Read books, watch documentaries. It was actually a little tougher for me because with me, one of the things I like obviously is rock and roll and concerts. But with that specific subject, there was nothing to teach me about how to take concert photography. That's what kind of made this book unique and the reason why I wanted to take on this endeavor, because when I was doing my research about, okay, what can I do to take concert photographs? Because I grew up on the greats. Annie Leibovitz from Rolling Stone. You had Neil Marshall. You had Mick Rock. He's the guy who supposedly photographed the 60s and 70s, those classic David Bowie photos. Mick Rock, all those greats. But yet at the same time, I was like, okay, how can I photograph that? Nothing at all. Absolutely nothing. So I had to look up tutorials, manuals, blogs, and I was like, okay, I'll go with that. But with that, I went and developed my own style. I kind of learned as I went along. And sometimes with certain endeavors, it doesn't matter. You need a jumping off point. And once you have made that leap, sometimes it's best to learn as you go along. Because as we know, I forgot which person said it yesterday though, but there's not one way to do it right in the film business. Well, it's like the same thing with photography. There is no straight beeline in how it is. There is no script to it. Sometimes you have to run before you can walk. Sometimes you have to leap without looking. But sometimes it's that feeling of the greater the risk, the greater the reward. So that's how it was for me. So in that regard, like I said, educate yourself. And then I took a class. I took a class on how to do photography, Clovis Community College. Kurt Lee King. If any of you guys want to take a photography class, Kurt Lee King, Photography 101 at Clovis Community. He knows his stuff. Only photographer that I know that has a mohawk. He was awesome. And he loved my photographs. He was a rocker too. So yeah, take a class, read books, and pretty much, get attuned with the subject. And then the next thing for me, like I said, when it came to concerts, that was my passion. I loved music. I grew up on classic rock. Me and my dad, he raised me on it. Kiss, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, Van Halen, Black Sabbath. I loved it all. I loved going to shows. My first show, 10 years old, Kiss, with Ted Nugent and Skid Row. That's where it all began for me. And I grew up on that. I grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s, the CDs, the sleeves, the photographs, behind the scenes or on stage. I lived for that stuff. So I was like, I want to capture that. So when I became a filmmaker, once I went to college, I was like, okay, well, at the moment, I don't have, a cast or crew to make something. So what can I do in order to facilitate my own filmmaking style? I had already written screenplays up until that point. So I was like, okay, well, how can I develop a visionary style? But all the great filmmakers I look up to, Spielberg, J.J. Abrams, George Lucas, whatever, they got whatever camera they had at their disposal, whether it be Super 8mm, 8mm. They went out and they just shot stuff. It didn't matter. Hey, got some friends together? Hey, we're going to make a little short film. Let's go do that. Or do you know what? I'm just going to show my parents cooking around the house or whatever. Just, that'll be my first documentary. There was no stopping them to what was their inspiration, their creative muse, in order to develop a visionary style. So I was like, okay, I have access to concerts. I worked for a local rock and roll radio station in town, 105.1 The Blaze. Have you guys heard of it? Yeah, I did promotions for them. So my job, out of the many responsibilities, was to do that, was to go out there to our events, mingle with our listeners, give away certain things like T-shirts and hats and stuff like that. And one of the responsibilities I had was, okay, we're going to be putting on this show, take photos of it, we're going to put it on our main website and our social media. So go ahead, take photos. So at first it was just as simple as like that. Okay, hey, I got my phone, whatever. Okay, I'll take a picture. Okay, whatever. Okay, cool. Send it to Facebook, whatever. Then as time went on, we ended up getting some real good acts. Trivium, Trapped, Puddle of Mud. And I'm like, oh, well, shit, these guys are some really great artists. I don't want to just, put out anything because, you've been to concerts. You guys been to sporting events. You guys see those guys with the cameras and those long lenses and stuff like that. And you're like, just off the bat, that guy's professional. That guy must know something. So that's where it triggered for me. I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do these shows, I want to look like that. I want to be a professional. I want to look like a professional. So that's where I got a hold of this. I went to my first show, and then boom, again, just snapped away. I was like, okay, this is pretty good. But how can I keep getting better? So that's when the journey began for me. Because with some of the concerts we didn't necessarily put on every show in Fresno. But I was like, okay, but I don't want to just do the shows that, the radio station does. I want to do more. So that's what I ended up doing. So it wasn't just rock and roll artists. It was hip hop. It was country. It was indie. It was all that stuff. And so with each show that I did, I progressively got better. So when I would go home and look at the photos, okay, well, what technique can I use? What can I change? What, can I change the lighting? Can I do, whatever. So that's what I encourage you guys to do. Always top yourself from the last project you guys did. Always evolve. And the next thing I'll say is, look for opportunities or create your own. So if with me, I had that at my disposal. I had the radio station. Okay, great. For a while that was working out, but I wanted to do more. So I was like, okay, So I went out and created my own opportunities. I saw that, Kings River Life, the publication I write for, they don't have anybody writing for them in terms of concerts, sporting events, or stand-up comedy. So I was like, okay, why can't it be me? I want to write about it. At that point, I really wasn't writing screenplays, but I had that urge to want to, at least keep the creative juices flowing, to want to write. And sometimes if I can't write fiction in a screenplay format, well, why not tell realistic stories then? Because we have interesting people here in the area, or people who come to the area that actually want their stories told. Like, actually, prime example, have you guys heard of these rock bands? Have you guys ever heard of Three Doors Down? Have you guys ever heard of Collective Soul? Well, I went to go see them last year in 2018 up at Tachi Palace. Do you know who was the only cover guy there? From all the news media outlets that we have here in the Central Valley, who do you think was the only one there covering the show? It was me. The Fresno Bee wasn't there. Neither was the Clovis Roundup, ABC News, NBC News, nobody. That was just me. So that's what I'm saying, is that these artists want their names out there. They want their shows out there. And sometimes the bold assumption is to think that, oh, heck, because, it's a big concert, it's a big name, everyone's got to be covering it. You'd be surprised. You'd be very surprised that from my line of work, how often I'm the only one there. And you're thinking, oh my God, but this is a Grammy winner. Oh hey, this person has sold millions of copies. You'd be very surprised. And that's why I urge you guys to do that, is that sometimes you guys think that, whatever creative content that you guys have, that, everyone's saturating the market with it. It may seem like that, but surprisingly it's not. That's why I encourage you guys to, whatever it is, photography, filmmaking, whatever type of online content you want to do, find something that speaks to you and make that be your own unique brand.
Excuse me, I'm going to jump in 1 second. I love what he's saying about creating your own lane and just going out there, and he shows up and he's the only dude there. I just want to add to that. When I was a film student, you know how students, we don't know much, right? We're just like two little geek off the street. Hey, what's going on? That was me. I was in Hollywood. I just left Madera, and I'm over there. And I go to Sunset Boulevard, the House of Blues. The House of Blues, baby. That's the House of Blues. And I come in, I'm trying to ask them to be their photographer, and they're like, this is the House of Blues in Hollywood. I'm like, yeah, so who's your photographer? And he's like, hold on, man, go talk to that guy. Go talk to this guy, that guy. I finally went and talked to him. They didn't even have a photographer. I was the guy in the House of Blues on the front, right there, my crotch is smashing up against the thing. I'm like, It was me. Some guy from Madera went over there and just asked him, and then I just got in. And I was like, I haven't even been in Hollywood like 4 weeks. What? Those people are sleeping on themselves. They're not having the self-confidence and the self-esteem in themselves to even just ask for something. So, just want to share that with you.
And I'm glad you bring that up, because actually that was my next leadoff, was like you said, finding your own opportunities. You guys like to think that people know what's up. Okay, there's a local company here, their own brand. They must have their own photographer, videographer. They know what's up. They know what's going on. No, they don't sometimes. You'd be surprised by how many of these people do not have their own marketing department. They don't have their own publicity. They don't have their own cameramen. They don't have their own copywriters. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you can't wait for them to come to you. You got to go to them. And that's what I did. Okay, Kings River Life. Okay, I see you guys have no one covering the local events in town. Can I? Yeah, go ahead. And then I did so, and I've been with them for like the past 2.5 years. And I've given my services to different people like that in the area. People in town are looking for music videos. Okay, I'll make you a music video. If you need publicity, I could, I could photograph you, do some headshots, or photograph your shows. So sometimes, again, when it comes to anything, don't wait for people to come to you. Sometimes you got to go get it. And sometimes it may make you look like an a-hole that, you're being too pushy. I don't think it's pushy. The only P word I use is persistent. And at some point, they have no choice but to say yes. But the thing is that if they do say yes, you got to give them a reason to say yes. You got to have the work to back it up. You got to make sure that if you're going to go to somebody and be like, heck, I'm your guy or I'm your girl, this is what I do. Well, then when you do that, you got to make sure they say yes. Yet they have no reason to. And that's what leads me to my next note, is that, let's be honest, when you guys first started your endeavors, filmmaking, screenwriting, photography, whatever, be honest, how How scared were you guys to take that leap before?
I'm still scared on everything.
You're still scared? Yeah. We all have fear. Was anybody else scared? Did you have any people doubting you? Did you?
I wasn't scared when I started because I didn't know enough to know that I should be. I got scared later.
That's cool. That's what's either in the beginning or once you actually go through the process. Did you have people doubt you and you have your naysayers when you told your mom and dad, your friends, oh heck, I'm going to get into filmmaking, I'm going to get into whatever? They're like, wait, what? Did we have all that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, more than likely, most of us all had that. But the funny thing is that from me being in this business for a long time, is that your worst critic, the worst person that's putting you down is yourself. Because believe me, when I started out doing this, I was the one giving myself more no's than anybody else. Because that's how I felt. Okay, oh hey, Doobie Brothers are coming into town. They got their own photographer. The news stations are going to cover it. They don't need me, so why should I even ask? But guess what? F it. Ask. What's the worst thing they're going to say? No? Okay. Well, you pick yourself up by the bootstraps, and then you go and ask the next artist. Hey, Bob Seger's in town. Sammy Hagar's in town. Whoever it may be. Ask them. They might say yes. Because at some point, like I said, there are only so many times you can knock on the door until somebody's going to answer you. But like I said, give them the work. Give them the product as the reason as to why they should hire you, why you should say yes. And from that point on, once I believed in myself and I just kept on asking, that's what ended up happening. All the yeses I wanted, I got. So in the end, get out of your own way. You're the one that's putting yourself down. You're the one that's self-criticizing yourself. Well, maybe I should do it. Maybe I shouldn't do it. Maybe I'm not good enough. Or like you said, I'm just starting out. I don't know whether if I should be criticizing myself or not. Get out of your own way. That's the best advice actually that George and them gave to me. That's actually why I brought that up when I was on his podcast a few weeks ago, and then when I took his classes. That was another thing that educated me because by the time I was going to his seminars back around 2017 leading into 2018, you see, I was in limbo. See, I did not know what to do with my photography. I just knew, okay, for the website, for the radio station, okay, give it to them. Here you go, put it on and stuff like that. But I did not know what to do with it. I really did not know beforehand, like I could make money off that, putting it on social media, putting it in all this other stuff. And then George, like the way we're doing, hey, yo, who are you? Stand up. Oh, hi, everybody. Hi, George. Hi, KP. My name is Steven Sanchez. I'm a concert photographer, this and that. And he asked me, okay, so what bands have you done? Oh, snap. Well, I've done Collective Soul. I've done Trapped. I've done Sammy Hagar. I've done Puddle of Mud. I've done The Guess Who, whatever. And he was like, wait, hold up, what? Wait, what? He's like, yeah, I photographed these bands. And he's like, okay, you photographed all these bands? Where are the photos? I was like, I have them saved onto my flash drive. And he's like, wait, what? You have all these photos of all these prominent bands, and you're not doing anything with them? You're sitting on a gold mine. Do something with it. So from that point on, and even with the, I don't want, maybe inspiration or the behest or the, the force of my sister, because I have a twin sister, and she's on my ass about that stuff. Like, Steve, come on, you got to get your shit together. If I think I'm my own worst critic, meet my twin sister. Okay, She hates me. Yeah, she hates me in a loving way. No, but with his inspiration and my sister's drive, they're like, yo, you have something valuable here of worth. Put it out there. And that was the next opportunity that came from after just doing stuff for the radio station. I gave myself a Facebook page. I gave myself an Instagram page, and that became the brand that I sold. I am a concert photographer. I am an event photographer, videographer, journalist. So when you look on my social media, bound more than likely each one post that I do is going to be of a new musician, of a new artist, of a different sporting event, of a different new stand-up comedy person who's coming into town.
What about selfies?
No, none at all. Well, actually, I take that back. Well, to help expand on my brand, you see, I'll do selfies with certain artists who are cool with that. Like a couple weeks ago, I was able to take a picture with Stephen Jenkins, the lead singer of Third Eye Blind. So sometimes you got to do that for your profile to let people know that,
That's you.
Yeah, that's you. You have a sense of legitimacy. So with me, like that, like I said, I took a picture of the lead singer from Third Eye Blind. I took pictures with the Silver Sun Pickups. They're a well-known band that 5 years ago, their song was featured in one of the trailers for Zack Snyder's movie Sucker Punch. So I've gotten the chance to, then Cristela Alonso, she's a well-known famous comedian. She's the first ever Hispanic woman to have her own primetime show on network television named Christella. See, I got to take a picture with her. I got to take a picture with Kelly Slater. Does anybody follow surfing? Yeah, got to photograph him. So sometimes with that, sometimes you got to put yourself in the spotlight to let people know, hey, this is what you're about. This is what you do. This is what you're a part of. So sometimes in the end, yeah, sell your own work, but every now and then you have to sell yourself. And then now, because of that, like I said, I did mention social media. I did mention, distributing your photos. Like I said, there's no excuses as to why you guys can't take photos. Well, now, it's easier now more than ever. There's so many outlets, so many platforms in which to deliver your content out there. 5 minutes, okay. So with that, that's what I'm saying. You have social media, you have YouTube, you have it all. So that's what I'm saying. There's no format now in which to stop you guys from putting yourself out there. So what have you guys got? You have so many things in your arsenal.
Does anybody in here have a question about journalism, public relations, promotions, marketing, anything like that, as far as using digital content for Steven? How can he promote your project?
Do you work solely with companies, or are you more of an independent, like you take pictures and you sell them?
And mostly independent freelance.
Okay.
Yeah,
So the companies you mentioned, they're not, you're not exclusive to them, you just sell content to them?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I usually hit up these artist managers, publicists, and I'm like, heck, I work for Kings River Life. I'm a journalist. I like to interview you guys. I take photos, so you'll be able to see them on our website or whatnot. If you want to use them at your disposal, here you go. Here's my contact info. Let's work something out.
Message. If you guys have an event coming up, you have a film release coming up, you have an artist, an actor, somebody who you want to promote, get publicity for, he might be the perfect guy, and he might even be able to get into Kings River Life.
What about press credentials or things like that? Do you have to deal with things like that when it comes to going to these events and stuff?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
yes, I do.
Guy.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. That's why I say ask. But do your research. Actually, surprisingly, in this day and age with the internet, it's not that hard to find. If you're looking for an artist, they have their contact info up. This is my management, this is my publicity team, or this is my record label. Contact them all. For an athlete, they had contact their manager, contact their agent, or some type of entertainment company they're associated with. Sometimes for some artists, it's easy on Facebook. Publicist, manager, this and this, and they name everything. And some bands, it's hard to get a hold of. Kiss, this was a bitch to get a hold of. These guys were tough. But luckily, I was able to get in contact with the people who run the publicity at Seymour Center, and I was able to get through them. So no matter what it is, no matter what barrier is holding you back, there's always a hump over it. Sometimes the journey of asking is easy, and sometimes it's tough. But the thing is that there's always somebody that can help you out. So it's a matter of, like I said, just being persistent. So once I did that, like you said, when you asked, doing freelance, and then me doing social media. So the next step, which I think is every photographer's dream, I have all this content, how can I put it into one format? Boom, book publishing. I was able to do 2.5 years worth of work and put it into one book. Some people, wait through decades to have a body of work to put into a book. With me, I was able to do it in 2.5 years. You can check it out and pass it along. And, but to add upon that, that's how it was. Luckily for me, my publishing journey was not that hard. Again, what did you do? I just asked. It all started from this. I went to Barnes & Noble. I was just looking through the music section. Heck, the great photography of the 70s and the 80s. It has Van Halen, it has Led Zeppelin, it has Alice Cooper, it has it all. So I will flip through and it's like, oh crap, on the back page right here, Amherst Media. If you're a photographer, if you want to get your book published, please hit us up, contact us, let's work something out. So I did. And then before you know it, boom, so what have you done? Gave them pictures of different artists, like I said, Pull It Up Mud, Godsmack, Lisa Loeb. I sent them all, and they're like, we want to work with you. So within that time, they're like, we like what we see, give us the content, and we'll take care of the rest. So with that, it was a collaborative process from the get-go. So sometimes, depending on what your publishing journey is like, sometimes it may be a little different. Sometimes you might need to be a little more hands-on, or sometimes in the end, all you had to do is provide the content. With me, in this regard, it was easier. All I had to do was provide content, and everything else was kind of smooth sailing after that. So like I said, just trust your instinct, just trust the work that you do, because sometimes in the end, that's all you need to do. Like I said, when you try to stop for yourself, you're already thinking miles ahead of, oh, well, snap, well, I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have that. Whatever. Sometimes just bring what you bring to the table, and in the end, you make other people look good for them choosing you.
What did it cost you to publish the book?
Not a damn thing.
Really?
Not a goddamn thing.
She got a publisher review.
Oh, that's right. That's what I missed. Okay.
No, for sure. But the thing is that,
Did you get it to them?
no, it was not. Like I said, all I did, their email was in the back of the book. I hit them up. This is what I do. Okay, send us some stuff. They liked it. We want to work with you.
Message.
Here's a contract.
You guys, earlier today, Rob Hayes from Live Nation. Live Nation, he's doing tours with Jay-Z, Madonna, Lady Gaga. You might have heard of them before. You know how he learned how to do that? From a book his grandfather gave him 15 years ago. It's like everything we need to know is in the books.
But that's the one thing that concerns me. Now, oh, someone had a question?
What was the start, finish, from start and finish of the book?
Oh, when it starts to finish, you mean the time that it took to make the book? I contacted them around this time of last year, like December 2018.
Wow.
So I was able to get some of the photos I did the year before that, and stopped by January, February of this year, and put that into the book. So luckily funny that with that's just barely scratching the iceberg of the amount of shows that I have done. Is there a sequel? You know it. Several. I plan on creating a Marvel Cinematic Universe of all the photographs of all the events that I've done. So you're definitely going to see more to come. But that's one of the things that is, I'll wrap it up, is concerning me right now is that, yes, it's great that we have all this stuff at our disposal, cameras on our phones and stuff like that. But nowadays, what's concerning me as a photographer, now that I've gotten more and more in-depth and into it, is that the lines have been blurred now between amateurish and professional. Because we live in a day and age of what?
Yeah.
Whatever, we live in that day and age now, to where, like I said, the lines are being blurred in a very disconcerting way. So nowadays, I think people are more so asking the question now, okay, well, Stephen, how do I develop a sense of legitimacy? How do I, separate myself from all the other people out there that I put in content that make themselves sound like they're a photographer, or they make themselves sound like whatever? That's what kind of bothers me about Facebook. Someone writes a critique, they all of a sudden think they're a damn film critic. They write a short story, puts it on Facebook. Oh, now all of a sudden they're a short story writer, and the list goes on and on. Facebook has given the people this, confidence, but also this delusion that whatever they put out, that's what makes them that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in that regard, everything that I said, if you do all those things, that's what will make you a professional. Learn and hone your craft, and at some point, people will pay you for those services. So if you get paid professionally for what you do, that already makes you a professional. Mm-hmm. If you got the chance to work with high-profile people, that makes you professional. So if, again, this is mostly like movies and everything like that. If you got to say, hey, I got to work with some, SAG actors or whatever, like Elena right there, that makes you a damn professional. You get paid for it? Yes, I'm a professional. Have you put it on all these other, streaming platforms or on these other websites and outlets? Yes, I've done that. So in the end, that makes you professional. That separates you from the, next Instagram model posting bikini photos of herself trying to sell energy drinks. You have to differentiate yourself, and there's certain criteria that you can fulfill, and that's what it is. So with me, like that, I have this. I have a photo badge. This is my Kings River Life photo badge, so whenever I go to a venue, whether it be Fault 55, Strummers, Selland Arena, Save Mart Center, or even the outdoor festivals like at Woodward Park, Rotary Amphitheater, they know I got this. They know that they're talking to a professional. You could just walk in as a camera with this phone. They're not going to let you in. But they see this. You see, that's the difference maker. And luckily for me, with the line of work that I do, I also get the chance to have these. Free photo passes. Luckily for me, this is like my feeling of legitimacy. This is my badge of honor, is that this is what I get to take home when I'm done. These are my amulets. These are my little pieces to show that I was there. Someone wants to be like, oh, heck, what do you know? What can you do? Whatever. Well,
so those are like your infinity stones.
Yes. My exactly. My tokens of me doing what it is that I love. If you want to know what I'm passionate about, this is it right here. You had Kiss right there, you had Doobie Brothers, you had Styx, you had Godsmack. And luckily for me, that's saying that on your podcast, when I told them that it's never work when you love what you do. Some of us, unfortunately, have jobs, or we've had jobs before that we don't enjoy what we do, we're just doing it for money, pay, whatever it may be. But if you truly, honestly love what you do, it's never, ever work. And this is what I chose to do, and this is why I enjoy doing everything that I do, is because this has been a passion of mine for so long. And if there's one thing that I could, instill in you guys, going forth, whether if it's photography, filmmaking, screenwriting, acting, whatever it may be, when someone asks you what you are, say it convincingly. What are you?
Filmmaker.
Say it again. Convince me.
Executive producer.
What's your name? What do you do?
I'm an actor and producer.
Writer, producer.
I'm an actor.
I'm a brand motivation.
I take pictures.
Actress. Writer, director.
Photographer, editor, cinematographer, anything, director.
I'm a professional filmmaker.
When you tell people that, say it convincingly. Make people believe that you are. Have confidence in yourself and believe in yourself. And never, ever be content on just doing the bare minimum or what you did last time. I live by this motto. Does anybody know who Tom Brady is? When people ask him, reporters ask him, hey, Mr. Tom Brady, you won a lot of Super Bowls. Which one's your favorite ring? Do you know what he always answers with?
What do you ring?
Who said that? The next one. The next one. The next one is my favorite. So like with me, Steve, I've had a lot of people ask me that, hey, what's your favorite photo? What's the best show that you did? I haven't done it yet. It's more than likely going to be the next one. And then the next one after that. What's the next best screenplay I'm going to write? It's going to be the next one. The next great movie I'll act in, it'll be the next one. So never be content on what you do. Improve, believe in yourself, and, the sky's the limit for all you guys.
Round of applause.
So I'll be selling some copies. So if you guys ever want yourself a copy, just let me know, okay? Bands.
Are we out of time for more questions? Is there time for more questions?
Yeah, more questions?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Steve,
Yep.
how do you monetize what you're doing? How do you make your money?
How do I make my money?
Yeah.
Well, like I answered with them, independent freelance, but you got to set the price of what it is that you do. What is your work mean to you? What is it worth to you? So that's what I'm saying. So like, for instance, like that, I talked to a band just a couple of days ago. They want me to publicize their music. They want me to publicize their shows, and they even want me to maybe at some point maybe go into a managerial role. I'm like, okay, well, this is what my price is. I'm a published author. These are the bands that I've worked with. This is my price. If you can't meet that, I'm sorry, but maybe we could work something out. But in between that, this is what I'm worth. You got to know your worth from the get-go of what service you can provide. So obviously, do your research. Like that's how I started out. Okay, well, how much does a photographer get paid? And sometimes you just have to, you look it out and balance it out. Okay, so how much is it per show? How much is it for how many photographs? I'm also a videographer. I want to do videos. I want to make movies. Okay, so how much does a photographer get while doing video? The editing costs and everything else, the equipment, the insurance and stuff like that, everything has to be taken into account. So if you don't have a jumping off point, you got to find one. So like I said, I wanted to do concept photographs. I was like, how much do they get paid? That was my jumping off point. Like that, how much does a screenwriter get paid for its first whatever? You got to look that stuff up. So that's what I'm saying. The research is out there at your disposal. So how you make your money, whatever it is that you're doing, no.
What's your phone number, Steven?
What's my phone number?
Yeah, everybody.
Obviously, area code 559-367-56.
No, I'm telling you, I'm getting his phone number.
37.
Get you work.
So set your prices accordingly.
Okay. Are all of the
Your PR
photos
manager.
in that
I'm your
book
PR manager's PR manager.
exclusive to the publisher, or do you have a non-exclusive agreement? Or
I own the rights. I absolutely own the rights, and that's something we established from the get-go. I was like, this is my content, so whatever it is I decided to do with them, even after the book is published, they're like, yes, these are your books, do whatever you want with them, and we met on that compromise.
Nice.
So in the beginning, you have to set the tone of what it is that you want to do, so I let them know about that from the get-go.
So let's say a decade goes by and you've now been to a couple of dozen Three Doors Down concerts, and you decide to put out a book titled A Photographic History of Three Doors Down from 2016 to 2026 of that decade. you don't even have to publish photos that are similar to those. You can use the same photos.
If I wanted to use the same, yes, I could. But you see, when it comes to that, like the specific one you said, that's where, you know, you're kind of delving into deeper waters here. Like if you wanted to do an annotated photography book based on one band, you see, you would have to ask permission for them. You see, like with this, what the shows I did, I went in there going in it as a journalist photographer.
Right.
I didn't say, yo, I want to publish a book. You see, if that was your intent, you see, you got to let the people know. You got to let the managers of the publicists know. It wasn't until later on that once I talked to the book publishing company, I was like, this is what I got. And luckily for me, you know, most of them, they don't have non-disclosure agreements because these concerts are public domain. They're all, you know, for the people. It's not like, it'll be different if I was going to shoot Beyonce and, you know, at that concert that I'm shooting, it's going to be for an HBO special. You see, that's a lot of contract signing. But if it's just like that, like Hinder, the guys who sang Lips of an Angel were at Stormers this past June. See, with them, I didn't need to sign any agreement. I was like, hey, Mr. Manager, do you mind if I photograph the band? Yeah, go ahead. So whatever I want to do with the photos, I get to do whatever. But you see, what I did with Kiss, you see, I had to sign several contracts, which I was only given 3 photos, no flash, and it was all in just the beginning of their set, only the first 3 songs. So, but with that, if I wanted to publish, you know, photos of them in maybe another book, you see, I would have to go to their management, Doc McGee, and probably more than likely have whatever publisher, whether if it's Amherst or if I go to somebody else, they would have to go to them and be like, oh, heck, you know, Doc McGee and KISS, you know, representatives, we would like to publish photos of this show at Save Mart Center. So, you know, sometimes you have to tread the waters lightly of, you know, what you could get away with and what you sign.
You guys, the photographs in his book, as far as quality, everyone's talking about quality, right?
Yeah.
6 megabytes. It's nothing, right? That's a tiny, tiny little image. That's a tiny, tiny little file size. So the image, the photos that are in there, it's only 6 megabytes. You don't need this crazy quality, billboard quality thing to even end up in a book. These are 6 megabytes. That's nothing. An email, one of my photos for my 5D is 28 megabytes. I can't even send that in an email because email only sends 25 megabytes. This is 6 megabytes. That's tiny, tiny, tiny amount of data. And it ends up in a book. So that's the point I'm trying to make. All right, you guys, let's give Stephen a round of applause. We're going to take a break. We got Mike Rinaldi coming up. Don't go anywhere. John Duffy's about to hit the road. He wants to say thank you and goodbye.
Hey, great stuff, man.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
That was fabulous. Hey, I just want to say thank you to everybody for this opportunity. First to George Ohan and KP, man, for making this happen. You guys are the greatest. So I want to thank you guys. Appreciate it, man. Let's give them a hand. And I'm sorry I'm missing your thing, but you know, but it's going to be live, so I'm going to get a chance to. So I'm going to watch it. So yeah, I really look forward to it. Unfortunately, it's going to be a long drive for me, and I just hope everybody learned, because I've learned a lot from all the people, whether it was online or just speakers here as well. So I mean, I come away knowing a lot more than I came here for. Awesome. So I think it was just a great day, and I've been pleasure meeting every one of you. I wish you all the best. And hopefully we'll get a chance to work together on some stuff in the future.
Oh,
all right? Be good. What's that?
You got to be the next batch of snow.
Yeah, I'm going to try. I sure the hell hope so.
Nice meeting you.
All right, everybody, write this down.
Sometimes it's kind of.
You guys hear that, guys? Come on.
Sometimes we want the social protocol.
Have a seat back.
Or I'm gonna be. I don't want. Yeah, I don't want to fight with anybody right now.
Yeah. Would it be appropriate just if we just all said a quick prayer for George's wife real quick?
That's fine, that's fine.
I mean, if anyone wants to opt out, of course.
Yeah.
but-
It's fine. Okay, guys, coming back, please. Everyone here. You gotta get. Okay, now we got the next. George had to go and take care of some business. His wife, so his was had to do that. So I'm gonna take over a little bit. We got one more. Mike is gonna be doing the writer's perspective, and then before that, Mike, you want to say something? You want to do some prayer?
Oh,
Yeah.
if you don't feel comfortable, just opt out, but I just want to say a quick prayer. Heavenly Father, George's wife, we don't know what's going on with her vision, and she's several months pregnant, I believe. And God, we just put everything in your hands, her safety, the baby's safety, and Lord, just ask for your protection and covering over them, and keep John safe as he tries to beat a storm heading back to Santa Monica. And thanks. Amen.
Amen.
Good night, guys. I like to introduce Mr.
Hey, all right. All right, and I am setting a timer for myself for the Q&A because I have to go not the timer, it's a, this one right here. I have to go really fast through this. All right, so we're going to do some Mr. Miyagi kind of stuff here. This will be clear why we're doing this in a couple minutes. So I can break down a joke much quicker than I can break down a movie. So I'm going to break down a joke. An Englishman is checking into a hotel. As the clerk hands him his key, he asks her, "Is there a TV in my room?" "Yes, sir," she says. "Can I get the porn channel in my room disabled?" She says, "This hotel only has regular porn, you sick freak." So, why did I tell you this joke? So, story structure is joke structure. There's a setup, a conflict, a resolution. That's commonly what people are told is your Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 in a script. This is established, setup, punchline. A punchline translates to a reveal in your screenplay. But in sophisticated humor, the crux of sophisticated humor is that it's not just funny, but why is it funny? It's an unexpected turn, because it's not funny if it's unexpected, but it's an unexpected turn that reveals a hidden truth, usually a relatable hidden truth. What is some of the hidden truths in that joke? What makes this joke funny? So she
missed twist that he didn't know that he wanted disabled porn. He thought that he wanted disability porn.
Right, and so it's a misunderstanding. I think plenty of people most people will relate to a noble intention is misunderstood and misperceived as something that's evil or wrong or shameful. Also, just in this example, the hotel clerk is female, the gentleman checking in is male, and it's a truth that men and women think and communicate differently. That's a fundamental of a lot of classic comedies and stuff. So let's look at the ingredients of this. You've got a setting. It's in a hotel. You've got a hero. It's the Englishman checking in. You've got a goal. He wants to. The subtext of the goal is actually that he wants to have probably a relaxing evening in the hotel room. The conflict, of course, is now that she thinks that he's a terrible pervert. And that kind of makes her the villain of this story in this joke. So you got your setting, your hero, your goal, your conflict, your villain, and you've got the ingredients of a log line. A log line being your one sentence that sums up what your story is about. It's what you use for pitching. It's usually the first thing that somebody will ask for, unless they ask for your title or genre first. But, you know, is your story about the perspective that it ought to be? Is it the best character perspective that you can choose from what you have? Let's turn this around. You know, it's been said that villains are often perceive themselves to be the heroes of their own story. You know, you try to bring down a corrupt politician, the corrupt politician probably looks at you and think, you know, this guy is trying to prevent me from doing my job. You know, it's a matter of perspective. Let's turn this around for a second. What does this look like if we just kind of, if I introduced the clerk before I introduced the person who's checking into the hotel? It might go something like this. A hotel manager. Now, why is it a hotel manager? It's 2019. A woman can't be a hotel clerk in 2019. She's got to be a hotel manager. That's the world that 2019, 2020 is now. So she's a hotel manager. She's nearing the end of a long shift, performing her duties with perfection and exceptional attention to detail, not that Frank ever notices. And in walks a man with a reservation. He asks, is there a TV in my room? Are there porn channels? How many porn channels are there? Is there one that's you know, like the kind that's got midgets in it? Now, SAG Diversity says you can't say midgets, so now I have to change this. So he's asking about little people. Is there a channel? And midgets and dwarves are two different things, by the way, and I like to be specific. You know, if a person pulls a gun out, what kind of a gun is it? If they're driving a car, what kind of a car is it if it pertains to character detail? Dwarves and midgets don't even walk the same way. It's, you know, it's a different thing, but SAG Diversity says that they all have to be little people, so I take issue with that. But moving on.
So you gotta change your joke?
You got to change, well, in the script, in the script you can do whatever you want with dialogue.
It's like a union, right?
Yeah. So
you only say certain things? You have to introduce Peter. If you're describing a character that's going to be portrayed by Peter Dinklage, who happens to be a dwarf, you actually are going to describe that character as a little person. In dialogue, you can say whatever, because that's what the characters are saying. But in your actual character description, the action lines, it's supposed to say a little person, and they will actually ask you to change it a lot of times. So, just one of those things. Hispanic has to be Latino. Now, Latino is and that changes every couple of years, and now Latino is just the broad, sweeping, you know, term for Hispanic or Latino, or Mexican or Spanish, or it's Latino. But anyway, so and then cut to you know, she's now, you know, punching out, walking through the rain to her car in the parking lot. Why did I park so far away? And just mad at this guy because he's a jerk. So anyway, that's kind of the story when you flip it around. But your character that you're introducing, usually you're going to introduce the protagonist before the antagonist, but not always. But the point to this, besides getting more laughs than I actually got in the room, the point was to think about POV is the right, you know, is the right character, is a story about who it ought to be about, you know. All right. So when you are meeting with producers, one of the questions that you're frequently going to get, let's say you've pitched it, it's a movie about blah, blah, blah. And the producer's going to say, all right, you told me what it's about. What's it really about? What that producer is asking is about a distinction between plot and story. Difference between plot and story. Plot is like a logical sequence of events that happens. The story is your meaning. It's the moral of it. It's your usually the character arc. A lot of this is going to be ideally subtext and not stuff that's just blatantly in dialogue, unless it's a faith-based movie and then everybody says exactly what they think all the time, and then everything is like, you know, lowest common denominator. And but if it's not that, then hopefully, you know, the meaning is subtext and it's there for you to mine out of it. There's also a difference between message and theme. So not that I'm picking on faith-based movies, but they're a good example of films that are stories that are propaganda first and story second, as opposed to story first. Propaganda usually gets a negative connotation. It doesn't have to be. A lot of documentaries are propaganda. It really just means that you are trying to convey a particular point of view or fact or something, and you want that to be, that gets primacy. You want that out first, and the story supports that angle or is to provide context for that angle, as opposed to, you know, a theme where you're mining a story for what you can get out of it. A message is usually limiting. It tells, and by telling, it excludes, and it's usually limiting a particular option, truth, or point of view, as opposed to theme, which is often broader. That's more inclusive. It invites. It gives you an opportunity to explore, to find a lot of different possible truths that can be, you know, in that story. And so I'm a story guy. Propaganda films for me are better for things that are educational in nature, educational, industrial, things like that. Don't sniff glue on top of a ladder. That should be a propaganda film. It's not a story about a warehouse worker named Clint who's sniffing glue, and then, you know, just, you know, tell the story. Get the message across if it's supposed to be a message, but know the difference. Don't try to sell a message first propaganda film to somebody who's looking for a narrative and looking for a story. But there are people who want who want propaganda films, but use the right tool for the right job. Know your audience, know your producer, know your buyer, know what your product is, and be realistic about it. A lot of people are just not realistic, and they think that everything that they come up with is 4 quadrants, it's for every audience. A lot of things should be niche or are niche, and know the difference. Great example of plot versus story, the movie Signs by M. Night Shyamalan. Is everybody familiar with it? Not everybody's familiar with it. The gist of it is it's a UFO invasion. This isn't really a spoiler alert, but that's the plot. When you get into what the story is, it's a story about a faith journey of Mel Gibson's character. And it's just I think that it's a good teachable example, even if you don't particularly like the film. I think it's kind of in the middle of Shyamalan's catalog as far as how I evaluate his movies. My personal favorite's Village. A lot of people bag on it. I think it's great. Yeah. And we can always talk in the parking lot about why that is. But moving on. Related to getting into story versus plot, kind of a follow-up or alternative version of, hey, what's it really about, is why must this movie exist? Entertainment is enough for some people to, like, it's going to make money. That's enough for some producers. It's going to be funny. It's going to be scary. It's going to be entertaining. That's enough for other people. It's going to get awards. That's enough. A lot of people, though, you know, you are looking at a 5-year, maybe on average, investment of your time. It's not just the amount of time that it takes to write a script and then get the movie produced, but then it's distributing it, promoting it. Distributing isn't just like, oh, hey, the movie came out into a theater or onto a DVD and we're done. It's got this whole long journey, an evolution that's going to take, you know, across various platforms with differently timed releases and all kinds of things, and it's a long trip.
I was told there's no time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
There's no time.
Right.
One of the scripts they were working on was, they started in 1997, and it was 2018 is when they were really starting to work on it.
Yeah, and what was Ed Norton's movie that just came out a couple months ago, Motherless Brooklyn? That was, 18, 20 years that he was shopping that around before he actually got a green light and then got to made it. Now he's got, now it's released, and he's probably got a couple more years of dealing with all kinds of rollout of distribution and stuff, so it's a really, really long journey. So you need to be passionate. You need to make your passion contagious. A lot of producers, when they understand why you're passionate about a particular story, that helps them, become passionate about it, and then that gives them a reason and excitement, to make the film. So that's making your passion contagious is probably like the third most important thing I think I'm going to say in the next half hour. I referred to log lines earlier. Your basic logline ingredients. Think a little bit bigger than just protagonist, goal, conflict, antagonist. A lot of times setting is a really important part. If you look at Tim Burton movies, where Gotham City and the Batmobile each kind of become characters. He talks about that. The Millennium Falcon becomes a character at a certain point. One of the differences between Star Trek TV series and the recent Star Trek movies is when the Enterprise is and isn't a character. When the Abrams movies, they did not treat the ship as a character. There wasn't, in the series, there's even kind of a personality to some of these ships. There's an emotional investment. You blow the ship up in every Abrams movie, and then I think the last one they blow it up in the first 10 minutes. Yeah, and it's think about the emotional investment and even non-animated pieces and characters. Think about that for merchandising. Is it going to be a Lego set? Is it going to be a toy or a T-shirt or on a coffee mug? What are people going to connect with? What are people going to want to cosplay as? You gotta really think about this stuff. Think about world building. Think about things that can apply to transmedia, where it's not just a film or a film franchise. Is this something that becomes a video game, a board game, a VR experience, a theme park attraction? Think this stuff through. These are the things that are, when a project is getting sold at DreamWorks, not everything's in-house. Like when some of these studios, Disney doesn't buy a whole lot of outside, developed product. They mostly do their own catalog and their own brands. But the studios that do, they're looking for things that they can run with for decades and mine for decades and build out. You got Harry Potter's probably going to go on forever. They were going to reboot it before Fantastic Beasts came out. And literally as soon as movie number 8 came out, they were already talking about, let's just reboot the whole thing. New actors, new directors. We don't need that story retold yet. And they worked a deal out with Rolling and got a new series going, and it's probably going to go on forever. But that's the beauty of world building. So really think this through. Not every story and genre lends itself to that. I happen to write a lot of romantic comedies. They don't really lend themselves to world building. Sometimes I'll pitch something where I've thought through a sequel, or maybe the supporting characters would be the lead characters in the next installment, or something like that. And it can actually have a natural growth, not like a really forced sequel in the event that it actually makes some money and they want to do another. But you get into fantasy genres. A lot of people make horror movies around here. Think through, developing characters that can maybe have not just a story that goes on, but a variety of different kinds of stories all taking place naturally and organically in that world that you've created. So, don't limit your scope and sphere of your stories. Think big and think, how far can you take it, I think it's good to plan for that stuff ahead. And people will ask you this kind of stuff in pitch meetings, or they'll intuitively pick up on, whether this is something that can really grow over decades and in multiple people's hands and stuff. Paranormal Activity, I'm going to guess, was not really, planned to be a big franchise. But Oren Peli, I mean, did the first, I think, 2 of those maybe, and then, went on to other things and working with Spielberg, and then, other people came in and built that franchise out more and more for the studio. All right, I'm going to give you an example of a log line. This is kind of, it'll sound specific, but it's broader than it appears at face value. I want you to tell me what movie this is, all right? Behind our reality is an unseen world that uses people as an energy source. 2 characters bring someone from our reality into their world who becomes our savior.
Matrix.
What else? You said Matrix. Monsters, Inc.?
Yeah,
That's exactly Monsters, Inc.
Yeah, I forgot about
But it's also exactly The Matrix.
Oh.
Yeah, so
No,
that's all right. People
because
cursed
the
earlier.
strings are battery source and everything. So yeah, you're right.
So there's people talk about like it's you can't copyright ideas. You can only copyright execution. You come up with a story that's similar to somebody else's story that usually doesn't kill your project because your voice is going to make it different. But somebody can come up with something like this, and you think, dang it, that's exactly what I've been working for years on that story, and someone has the exact same thing. But there's even with this, there's entirely different ways that can be executed out.
So you're telling me Monsters Inc. is a cartoon version of The Matrix?
Yes.
That's gonna blow my mind.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yes. Monsters Inc. is a cartoon version of The Matrix.
Okay. Yeah.
With monsters
All
and.
right. Thanks,
Yeah.
guys. I'm done.
Which I'm not, I can't take credit for this. This is in Save the Cat. So when I started reading Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, you all know my email address is mike@blakesnyder.com. So obviously, Blake and I were pretty close. That was what sold me on the book, because I was reading it. I was exactly what, I think it's what Dominic said yesterday morning. I was the guy that probably right about 10 years ago thought that I knew everything, and now I don't know half as much as I used to know. And what really sold me on Blake Snyder was when I said there's no way Monsters, Inc. is The Matrix. But sure enough, it absolutely is the same thing.
I'm gonna wanna watch.
Yeah.
That's trippy.
Zombie movies. So I've got, if you can cut the audio pause the audio for about 2 minutes. So when you're going out and getting money, and thank you, KP, when you're going out and getting money, a lot of it hinges on the star. So that brings up, obviously, not just how do you pitch. We mentioned Stephanie Palmer's book, Good in a Room, earlier. Not everybody was here. But Good in a Room is the pretty much authoritative book on how to pitch. It's geared for screenwriters, can be used for pretty much any kind of entrepreneurial activity. Goes through the 5 phases of a pitch meeting based on the thousands of hours she did in pitch meetings as an MGM executive and how to succeed at each stage. Great book. The gist of it, the basics of it are free downloads on her website, goodinaroom.com. Highly recommend that. I recommend Save the Cat by Blake Snyder for how to write really, really strong, compelling log lines. There's tons of screenwriting books to choose from, of course, but I think it's probably the best one just for log lines, at least. So those are 2 of the things that, 2 of the resources to keep in mind. But when you're going out and pitching, a lot of companies have very good policies about not accepting unsolicited submissions. I'm just me, and I have had to, I didn't used to be that exclusive, but I had a guy just like getting on me, would you please read my script, please read my script. And then I said, I gave him some feedback, and then he accused me of idea theft, like almost immediately. And I'm like, dude, I didn't even really want to read your script, and now I have to enforce the no unsolicited submission policy that everybody else has, because that stuff happens. You got the people who are always suing whoever that claiming that they wrote Avatar or whatever. You looked like you had a question.
I did. When you're talking about pitching,
Yeah.
I know you're going to do putting that Q&A afterwards, but I had how do you get to the studios to pitch?
Right.
I have LOIs with Josh Henderson and Ryan Kelly for 2 movies that we're working on. And
Donnie Darko, right? Ryan Kelly, or is that
Ryan Kelly from
different
from
person?
Teen Wolf. He's on Teen Wolf. I don't know what else he's on.
Oh, okay, all right.
He's a sheriff on Teen Wolf.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was thinking of the writer of Donnie Darko.
Yeah,
But
and
okay.
then, John Henderson is Dallas and the arrangement, the star of Dallas and the arrangement. When I talk to people in Madeira, they don't give a shit. They're like, who the fuck are those people? I don't know who those are.
Yeah, of course.
But how do you get to a studio to give them your unsolicited script with these 2 names attached with LOIs and everything?
Yeah. So.
But you,
yeah.
Too late. I was just you were trying
Yeah.
to pitch it, and I was just kind
Yeah.
of
So be a nice person, be a respectful person, and try to do quality work, and then definitely try to get a reputation. If you pitch crap products, people will definitely stop taking meetings with you. But you kind of have to earn your place to get to those, especially without an agent. A lot of people want to know, how do I get a literary agent? So here is where you can look at it as an obstacle or an opportunity. We've talked about that, I think, all weekend. This is a huge blessing. Screenwriters have fired their agents. Earlier this year, the Writers Guild had a beef with the ATA, which is the agents, and everybody got fired. It's not one of the big, all of the big agencies are basically not repping screenwriters. One of the mid to large ones is Verve. That is VERVE. Verve has actually signed and agreed to the Writers Guild Code of Conduct, is what they call it. And a lot of people who left WME and UTA and wherever, they've either gone to Verve or they've just decided we're going to live in a world without agents. So the good thing is, to use this to your advantage, is you can't go to a studio and the studio says, well, if your project's any good and you're any good, then you'll have your agent contact me. Well, if you're a screenwriter, they know, well, you probably don't have an agent, especially if you're a professional screenwriter. So it's actually a good time to be going out. Here's where I go. I contact actor-owned production companies. That's almost always my first company point of contact. Most big actors have their own production shingle. Many of them have a first look deal at a studio. or they have a distribution deal of some sort in place. The bigger the name they are, the more likely that's the case. Many of them have very friendly people answering the phones, and they're surprisingly easy to contact. I don't think they really get a lot of calls the way, this is kind of my secret sauce recipe for how to do things. They don't get the calls the way that Disney says, and the big studios, they're just going to shut you down immediately. Even when back in the good old days, 8 months ago, when writers had agents, people are trying to get a lit agent, and if you can get a star attached, whose agent is going to do a better job selling your project? Mike Rinaldi's agent who represents Mike Rinaldi, or Reese Witherspoon's agent who represents Reese Witherspoon? My friend Bill is one of the top paid screenwriters in the world. He co-holds 2 records with his writing partner Terry. Highest paid screenplay sale of all time, Deja Vu, $5.5 million. Highest selling pitch, meaning the screenplay wasn't done. It was just like a 20-minute pitch meeting of all time. $3.5 million. Bruckheimer bought a project called Lightspeed. This is a big guy, and he had a sci-fi spec that was going out, and I hope I can say this on on TV. But Reese Witherspoon came on board after he had basically gotten turned down everywhere else, and this was 4 years ago. So she had like 3 movies come out, all in the holiday/Oscar season. The Good Liar and a couple others. Whatever that was, it just called Wild, or whatever the one was where she's in the wilderness. Yeah. Oh man, we're already coming down on time. So anyway, the point is that she attached to produce and star. She was really, really hot for Oscar buzz, and came out and took the project out, and it sold, and it brought in a really good paycheck. I don't know where it is in development currently. So a couple quick things. When you meet people, it's not appropriate to pitch your project to just everybody you come across. If you meet Steven Spielberg, how do I turn this off? There we go. You meet Steven Spielberg in an elevator, you got a horror movie, it's probably not right for Spielberg. So don't try to pitch it to Spielberg, but try to build relationships first. Don't elevator pitch right away. Try to find some sort of common ground that makes you interesting, makes them want to revisit you. Aim for a coffee meeting down the road that'll give you 20 opportunities to pitch in the future rather than pitching right now. Know your hook. The traditional hook and is like, what's the most exciting few words to get me to see this? The movie Alien, the hook was, it's Jaws in space. Jaws and Alien, also the same movie, in case you didn't know that. We're going to let this thing eat a bunch of people for the sake of greed. So, corporate greed. It's the same story. So you put it in space, call it Alien, it's the same thing, but that gets people excited. That's the hook. I want to suggest another way to think about your hook. It's whatever distinguishes your project from the other movies that are most similar to it. It's the same thing as the zombie thing. If your thing is that it's like your other classic zombie comedies, except it's the big climax is at an amusement park. It's called Zombieland or something like that. Distinguishes it from other things that are similar. The distinction is your power. Your voice as a writer, a content creator, an actor, whatever it is that you're doing, is whatever distinguishes you from somebody else, and that is what you use to build your brand. So going back to my friend Bill one more time, we had a conversation a few years ago where I said, I'm really concerned about my brand because everyone's told me how important this is to have. My first project is possibly going to be a horror movie because of this thing I've got in development, but I'm mostly a comedy writer, and I don't want to be limited to either of those because I also like adventure and sci-fi stuff. How do I come up with a brand? And so we talked for a while and figured out that as we got into the story themes that I care about and what's personal to me, we figured out that I've got some themes that recur in absolutely every story that I tell. So my brand is not restricted by genre. It's not defined at all by genre, even though I write comedy more often than not. My brand is that I'm always writing about outsiders, where the conflict comes from the irony of them trying to fit into a world that they don't understand. And the way that that story and movie experience translates to the audience is it helps the audience find community. Everybody who's been everyone's felt alienated or isolated or as an outsider as soon as they've come into an environment that they're not familiar in. Somebody might have been the most popular, football player in high school or something, and you stick him into a music program. Is this Glee? This is basically Glee. You stick him into a music program, and all of a sudden he doesn't, fit in and whatnot. So everybody relates to that, And so I just decided that that's kind of my thing. And as I found my tribe is a community called Act One down in Hollywood. And it's also a TV show called Chuck that was on NBC for 5 years. Those are, I work with those people absolutely every opportunity I get. It's my tribe, as Dee mentioned earlier. It's people who are going to support you. You're going to support them. It's usually people where you have common values and common vision. So you need people that share your vision and support that to either just be your cheerleaders and supporters, or to be on your team, or to be your partners. Finding those people is gold. And I think really once you find your brand and you find your tribe, you're set. I think the hardest stuff is absolutely already done at that point in time. Branding, just to give you kind of another example of how much distinction matters and what value that is. If you're writing, let's say you've got a character who's just really super intense. Who are some actors that would play really intense characters?
Chris Moore.
Okay.
Can't think of his name right now. It's you've seen Uncut Gems, Adam Sandler. Who does he remind you of? That other
kind of Al Pacino?
Al Pacino. There you
Yeah.
Did he remind you of Al Pacino?
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it, but now that you say it, yeah, he really did. I think he was channeling. Yeah, he was kind of channeling Al Pacino. So Al Pacino and Denzel Washington comes up, and so I was in a class and they were talking about branding, and they said they're both really intense, but are the same kind. No, Al Pacino isn't necessarily like playing somebody who's out of control all the time, but he's playing what they call passionate intensity. Denzel Washington is controlled intensity. If you look at that, he's always in control of the situations, and his movies are also usually about correcting an injustice, and that's kind of his brand. And the advice, there's a lot of myths online. Don't learn about screenwriting from Facebook and LinkedIn groups, because most of those people, it's the blind leading the blind. It's non-professionals. The people who tell you that Final Draft is the industry standard for screenplay software. I noticed recently that because that question got asked, all the people who said Final Draft is industry standard were people who lived outside of California. The professionals in the group, who usually don't get listened to, we're all using, some of us are using Final Draft and some of us are using 3 or 4 different programs. Final Draft is falling out of favor currently. It might come back into favor again, but right now it's kind of anybody goes. Movie Magic, writer duets, really popular now. Highland is catching on. Anyway, but don't trust everything that you read in online. Know who you're getting advice from. Look people up. Are they professionals? Are they on a TV writing staff? Have they been producing stuff? What else am I absolutely missing? I know I didn't get to even a heck of a lot of what I wanted to. Jason Blum and Seth Rogen, real quick. Jason Blum apparently has kind of evolved to requesting proof of concepts, if it's even from people he knows. So before he reads a screenplay, if you don't have a proof of concept, he'll tell you, go make one, come back. I've heard this from 3-4 different people in the last year, I guess.
Now, would it be better to shoot a proof of concept, because it's obviously a lot cheaper than it is to shoot like a whole film and try to send it to them?
It's not cheaper if you want quality.
Well, and you know what? And I'm a screenwriter, and I hate reading screenplays. It's really hard. One of the ugly things about Hollywood, the little secrets, nobody likes reading anything. It's really hard to get people to read stuff. It's really easy to get people to watch the first 30 seconds of a 3 to 4 minute video. The proof of concepts are a big deal. Seth Rogen was talking at the Produced By conference and said something that later got repeated by a lot of executives. And by the way, I admit I shortchanged that guy. He is a good businessman. Most successful actors and producers aren't getting by on talent alone. It's part of their talent is business. He started at a young age shadowing other people in every minute that he got. And he said that he won't take meetings from people who haven't made their own content. He says there's no excuse. You can shoot something on your phone and put it on Vimeo or YouTube or whatever. Not that everything needs to be out there for the world, but you can always have, private links to things. And he says, you know what, if you're a writer, I'm not going to judge it by the acting, I'm not going to judge it by the lighting, but I can tell if you know how to write a story, you know how to write catchy dialogue or whatever it is. And I've heard that repeated more and more. A lot of the screenwriting contests are, Dee said mom and pop. That's a much politer, I would say, scam. Some of them are just absolute outright scams. But a lot of them are just kind of small potatoes, and they're not going to get you any kind of meaningful result. They're not going to get you a manager. They're not going to get you a sale or anything. A lot of them. Some of them will. But I think that I just prefer to put that money and energy into shooting proof of concept. Do it on a weekend with your friends. Have something to show people. And how do you get these meetings? How do you? I got a short list for you. Mutual friends. It's like if you've ever had a sales job. I used to sell Cutco when I was in college. Still the best knives in the world. So I believed in the quality. So it was a lot easier than like if you're selling the hottest new vacuum, which may or may not suck. Either way. I instead of just getting referrals, like I'll kind of get the referrals, but then I'll just ask somebody to make an introduction. Like, if you don't BS me. So if you believe in me enough, or believe in this project enough, will you make the introduction? There's a rule in Hollywood, the one ask rule. Has everybody heard this, or has nobody heard this? Okay, so you got the one ask rule, which is basically you can't ask 2 favors of somebody that you don't have a good relationship, good rapport with, or good history with. So right around Halloween, I went to a screening of Sinister. I know the movie's been out for a while. There's already a sequel, but this was just a couple months ago. So Scott Derrickson, the co-writer, director, did a Q&A. I've known Scott. We're not close, but we've known each other somewhat for about 10 years. And I went up to him and I said, Scott, I'm invoking the one ask. I usually don't point out that I'm doing it. The reason I did it is because I wanted him to know how much weight I was putting on this ask, and I knew I've been saving this up for 10 years. If I'm only going to ask one thing of you in my lifetime, this is it. This is what I want. I said I started a medical science documentary a couple of years ago, and the perfect host and narrator is Joel McHale. I would like you to introduce me to Joel McHale. That's Scott's best friend. And the answer was, send me the materials. If it's not bad, I will introduce you to Joel. I believe Joel is probably one of the 2 linchpins to getting the funding to finish the film out and this is something that we have budgeted an Oscar campaign for. I think it's the best way to get people to watch a documentary is to campaign for the awards. I mean, you have to spend the ad money, that ad money on the awards campaign, which, if you're wondering, that is $3.5 million roughly for at least for a documentary or short film. If you've got something really big like Joker, they're spending way more money on than that. But there are ways to basically buy the nominations, in case you wanted to know. You just have to plan for it, and that's the thing. A lot of people don't plan. It's so genuinely hard just to get a movie made that people don't always plan the next steps after that. They think, okay, I made this. Now I'm going to go to a festival. Now I'm going to shop it around, try to get somebody to buy it for distribution. I try to get the distribution before we even, finish the budget. So I said, look, we want $5 million. We can make it for $1 and that's including our above the line. We can get the whole thing completely done above the line in music probably for $1 million. That gives us $4 million for forewalling, for campaigns, for everything we need to do to qualify for that. In my opinion, it's a way better pitch to say, hey, buddy, I'm doing a medical science documentary. Would you like to contribute some money to the thing versus, hey, I've seen you've produced some things, but you don't have an Oscar nomination yet. Would you like one?
I like that.
Anyway, so go out, get referrals, make friends. It's go to events, invite people to events. I got some big producers and actors to kind of become friends with me on accident. When I saw that they were moving into a digital realm, and I was at a digital media conference, and I just sent them emails. I had never met these people. I just emailed them. They didn't know who I was, and I said, this conference is going on. It might interest you, and if you'd like to come, I'll have the person putting on the event send you free tickets. And the answer was, we're unavailable that weekend. Would you like to come by our office next week? Yeah. I sat in the office and I pitched everything I could think of for that would interest them for like 45 minutes after we got done talking about kids and dogs and what kind of sandwiches we like and whatnot. So anyway, so the resources that I recommend, Stephanie Palmer, Good in a Room, goodinaroom.com, savethecat.com, Blake Snyder, Save the Cat. Some things that you may not think about as resources, but I highly recommend the Script Notes podcast. It's not just about writing, but it's also the business of screenwriting by two of the top screenwriters, John August, who does a lot of Disney and Tim Burton movies, and then Craig Mazin, who just did Chernobyl and won a bunch of Emmys for that, or at least one. Every Frame of Painting on YouTube I recommend to every filmmaker, whether you're a writer or not. And then the Screen Rant pitch meetings. Screen Rant overall, don't judge the pitch meetings by the rest of the content. A lot of it's clickbait stuff, to be honest. But Ryan George's pitch meetings are where he plays a screenwriter, also plays the executive that he's pitching the project to. And the joke is, here's my thing, and then the questions expose all of the plot holes that they excuse for whatever reason. The best one to start with, I think, is the Jurassic World. You'll die laughing in like 5 minutes. Screen Rant. And then Shark Tank is a great show for getting that's actually pretty, even though that's like usually entrepreneurial inventions and things, that's pretty much an abbreviated version of how it goes pitching a movie. And then a couple other things on YouTube for screenwriters. BAFTA has a lot of great interviews and speeches and things by screenwriters. And then the Hollywood Reporter Roundtable. Highly recommend that as well. Last book that I recommend, The Hollywood Standard, 2nd edition for screenplay format. by Christopher Riley. Format absolutely matters. One of the myths going around the internet is that it doesn't. Some of the people perpetuating that myth are even professional screenwriters who somehow think that just because they managed to get a couple $1 million in career sales, and people will absolutely take their pitch meetings and their submissions and stuff, that they can just kind of write whatever, and the format doesn't matter. What they don't know is my friend Derek at Warner Brothers, his job is to reformat all of the scripts that Warner Brothers acquires to fit the proper standard, and a lot of professional writers don't know don't believe the standard is even a fixed thing. It absolutely is. There's some things that you can take discretions and liberties with, like whether you want to bold or underline your scene headings. That is totally up to you. But the order of a scene heading from generic to specific, those are non-negotiable. Remember, a screenplay is not just a creative document, it's 50% a technical document as well. The format isn't just because it's tradition, it was always written this way. It's also because, you got UPMs and line producers are breaking things down, and if you didn't do the job of formatting it correctly, then they have to reformat it before they can do all your breakdowns and stuff for either budgetary reasons or physical production. So that is probably 90% of what I wanted to share. So are there any questions about this or anything else?
I think you kind of answered some of mine along the way.
Yeah, there was a bunch of them that you went through that kind of cleared up some things. The Hollywood Standard book that you're talking about, what's the full title?
The Hollywood Standard Second Edition
Second edition, okay.
by Christopher Riley, Riley.
My question is, how do I get to work with you?
You work with me? We'll talk. Well, I mean, just pitch. I'm here for you guys. So, I'm producing. When I say that I'm producing 4 movies right now with budgets ranging from under $1 million to $20 million. You get fixated on the $20 million, but like one of them is the documentary is 5, and like I said, most of that is for marketing and Oscar campaigning. The other 2 are under $1 million. One of them's probably going to be I think they're both going to end up being modified low budget. One of them might be less than that. But if somebody has a really great idea for something that can be shot for less money and it's going to be quality, I'm all for it. I'm not, just because I work in a particular, gravitate toward a particular realm doesn't mean I'm like against doing other things. So I don't want people to think that. One other thing, I want to dispel the myth of the 4 Toms rule. The 4 Toms rule is, I don't remember who all the Toms are, but this is that you write a character to be played by a character that can be played by either Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks and then like 2 other people, and I don't remember who the other Toms are. I don't know who made that up. I think it's stupid. I think it's just not realistic, because the more specific a character is to somebody's brand, the more someone's going to want to play this. People usually don't want to take, a role that could be played by anybody. But when they say, this is me, this is me, they're more likely going to want to, do that. You need to be terse almost everywhere else in a screenplay. You can take a little bit more time with character introductions. Actors absolutely read the character introductions. They usually care about, how many pages they've got. They care about, and less the subjective things. It usually has less to do with catchy one-liners, quotable dialogue, or cool set pieces, because that stuff's usually going to get rewritten anyway after it's been sold and it's going through further development on its way to production. What they care about is objective and not subjective. If their character is responsible for major plot turns, or better yet, plot turns that are act breaks, those are things that will not get cut out of the screenplay. Those are most likely going to, unless they completely dismantle the thing, But if they're just doing polish after polish, those things are going to stay in. That means their screen time's not getting cut. They're a pivotal character. A lot of them want things that are going to get them awards. Awards aren't usually just a passionate speech. It's a passionate speech that resulted in a huge turning point in the story. Those are the things. If you look at which actors are getting nominated, and then look at what those characters did, or what parts, or if they're in almost the whole movie, like Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems, look at what they're highlighting when they're promoting those considerations. They're usually promoting the things that it's like a major plot turn. If those major plot turns are happening via characters that are not your big names, you didn't write the script correctly. You got to make sure that those are lining up. So that's a very physical, mechanical part of the script. And so knowing what's subjective, what's objective, the stuff that you guys find funny, I might not find funny. What moves me might not move you emotionally. So you can't count on everybody responding the same to comedy and drama, but story structure is a much more fixed thing. So that's one of the ways to gauge whether you're really writing roles that are going to attract actors. Does it fit their brand, etc. So I don't want to repeat myself and have a thing I was about to. Yeah, any more questions?
No.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Everybody.
I guess I got to do the closing because, yeah, George. But I do appreciate everybody making your time here. And please give all our guests, our speakers that got called in and were here from yesterday and today. I just want to recap a little bit. I'm not going to repeat a lot of things. Just want to appreciate you guys. Educate yourself. Constantly educate yourself, guys. These guys didn't just happen. They did 4 years ago. They did a lot longer. The guys who've been in this industry are always constantly learning. You're reading variety. We'll keep up information. Even though we live here, we say that there are information we can gather through online, and we have resources here. It's nothing personal. It's business. When you start dealing with certain people in the industry, it's very much about business and building relationship. A lot of us have built relationship. Not just, it's been a long time to get to able to have that conversation at the table. A couple times I probably meet these guys 4 or 5 times, never had that conversation until they approach you. It's just the right time. Like he said earlier, sometimes you go to the room, you just got to shut up. Just be quiet, listen, and follow directions, and then opportunities will happen. And when that opportunity happens, make sure you're ready. You're good way to do. But keep creating. Thank George, you guys, for putting us together, and I'm looking forward to doing more of this event, bringing more of our friends that we have established through the years from both industry, from the acting perspective, from the producing perspective, from guys that are mentors. These are my mentors. These are George's mentors. These are some of the guys that we have been working for years, and we live here. We don't disvalue yourself. I think we got tremendous talent in this valley. We all know that. We just got to be able to develop, keep going, let them do what they got to do. But we have people that we can work with. These are the resources you guys have now with what George has been giving you guys, and the things that we continue on moving. If you get a chance to go to LA and take courses, take workshop, do that, guys. Opportunities are there. We've been offering things to George, going to film school, going to the events. Please do that. It's always good to work with each other. Again, we don't take it personal. I don't take it personal because I don't work with you. That doesn't mean I'm taking, no, it's not. It's just there's certain things that we have to take care of within our own company, with our own individual talents and work. So I encourage you guys, if you guys have any questions, please contact George, contact me, and the folks that we have here. So thank you guys. Let people know. Those who missed out, they really do. Of course, it's in stream, but I appreciate you guys. For me, seeing people here, it's a lot. It's a different take on what I see that actually that don't show up. So those I appreciate. I respect you guys for it. So have you guys a hand. All right, guys. Great event. See you guys next time.
Penn and Teller Coolers, what's that?
What? Penn and Teller.